Good morning and welcome to GATE Equity Webinar 101. Today we're going to talk about school climate and behavior basics. As we go through the webinar, please keep webinar etiquette in mind. I want to thank you for joining us. I'm Bonnie Zimmerman. I'm a program specialist in the Office of System and School Improvement. Today's topic is School Climate 101, Behavior Basics. We have three guests with us today. We have Joe Brown, who is our new School Climate Transformation Implementation Manager. We have Paul Wieneke, who is one of our partners, our continuous improvement partners. And we have Val Jones coming to us from the Franklin Pierce School District. We also have a YouTube channel at OSPI. That's where our past webinars are. It'd be great if you wanted to join. There are a lot of other things on the YouTube website, our vision, mission, and values. This is brought to you by the Office of System and School Improvement. We have an equity statement. Each student, family, and community possesses strengths and cultural knowledge that benefit their peers, educators, and schools. This afternoon, we'll be covering the tiered fidelity instrument during our School Climate 201 webinar. It's at 3 o'clock. Next month, we're going to be covering substance use. Our objectives: understand the big ideas behind school climate, get some basics about how positive behavior practices can make a difference in your school, hear from a district, and get resources. Again, I'm Bonnie Zimmerman. We're joined by Joanna Brown, Paul Wieneke, and Valinda Jones. This is our first poll. We want to know who's in the audience. I'm not quite sure why we're not launching the poll, but we want to know if you're an administrator, a counselor, teacher, parent, ESD, professional. We'll come back to that. We're gonna let Joanna get started. If you want to type in the chat what your role is and why school climate, that would be great. We'll be monitoring the chat. But now I'd like to introduce Joe Brown, our School Climate Transformation Implementation Manager.
Good morning. I'm going to start by just talking about why school climate. Why is this a topic of conversation, topic across the state? And there are many reasons and across the country why school climate and an effective school climate improvement process are important. When we think about school climate improvement work, the positive results of a strong school climate can be grouped into 4 buckets: safety, teaching and learning, institutional environment, and interpersonal relationships. When we think about the effect of a positive school climate, within the bucket of safety, research shows that a positive school climate can have a dramatic decrease in student behaviors, lower rates of student suspensions, and discipline issues. When we think about school climate and a positive school climate through the lens of teaching and learning, we know that it contributes to higher graduation rates, and there's a powerful correlation between improved school climate and increased motivation to learn. Positive school climate is also correlated with decreased student absenteeism and lower rates of student suspension in high school. Positive school climate impacts the institutional environments within schools. School connectedness is a powerful predictor associated with adolescent health and academic outcomes, as well as improved staff morale. School climate has a large impact on relationships between all staff and students in every school. We know that positive student-teacher relationships result in the probability and frequency of less behavioral problems, and we know that positive school climate fosters a greater attachment and engagement in school from our students. Okay, so what does our data tell us about school climate here in Washington? Oftentimes when we talk about measuring school climate, we look at rates of exclusionary discipline. Our OSPI report card data from last year tells us that during the 2017-18 school year, 4% of students in Washington received short or long-term suspensions. Our least impacted students, when we're talking about expulsions or long or short-term suspensions, are student subgroups of Asian students and white students. Subgroup that is most largely impacted, and work is being done to see the correlation between school climate impacts and disciplinary rates with our American Indian and Native Alaskan students and our Black students. You can see that the discipline rates are much higher at 8.2% for American Indian or Native Alaskan students and 8.5% for our Black students. Another piece of data to look at when talking about school climate is our Healthy Youth Survey, which is a collaborative survey between OSPI, the Department of Health, and the Department of Social and Health Services, and others. This survey is conducted every 2 years, and last year in the fall of 2018, students from 236 school districts were asked to participate in this survey. And there were several questions asked around the topic of school climate. Two pieces of data to know are that 51% of sixth graders reported that they enjoyed being at school over the past year, and 68% of sixth graders reported that their teachers noticed when they were doing a good job and let them know about it. A large piece of work that we're very fortunate to have going on in Washington State right now is the Washington School Climate Transformation Initiative. Washington was awarded the School Climate Transformation Grant in 2018, and it will go through 2023. The big goals of this initiative are to implement MTSS, PBIS implementation within 30 identified school districts across the state, to provide high level of training and alignment of coaching practices for those district teams from the 30 district, as well as OSPI staff, ESD staff, and building capacity for more coaching around MTSS and PBIS statewide. The longer, broader goal of this grant is to build state capacity for assisting schools across Washington with a broad-scale implementation of multi-tier behavioral support systems. So at this time, I would like to turn this presentation over to Paul Wieneke, who is a continuous improvement partner from OSPI. And let's hear a little bit more from Paul about building positive school climate. Paul?
Hey, thanks, Joanna. I wanted to just go back to this slide really quick and put a plug in for the Office of System and School Improvement. If you're a subscriber of the Office of System and School Improvement newsletter, we had a video starting out, it came out last week, simply stating that school climate is a way a school feels. And these 4 buckets here really involve all the stakeholders in the quality and character of school life. So I refer you to more information above and beyond this webinar to the National School Climate Center, and that's at www.schoolclimate.org, and we'll point that out later as a citation. And these are trending topics from OSPI, and the Office of System and School Improvement recent newsletter is completely on school climate, and it's introduced by our amazing Assistant Superintendent, Tennille Jeffrey Simmons, and supported by our amazing Director, Dixie Grunfelder. Thank you for presenting these trends. I wanted to point on the left-hand side that we're talking about the disconnect, but thank you to all of our fine folks down at the Healthy Youth Survey for presenting the trends. On the right-hand side, 51% of sixth graders and 68% of sixth graders. As Joanna talked about earlier, my question out to you as the group is, what can we do as schools and as leaders of schools to increase these percentages so that over 80% of sixth graders reported that they enjoyed being at school over the past year? Because that's where school climate really starts. And it's great that we have funding that will help us, and I'll talk about that in a second. I am Paul Wieneke. I'm a continuous improvement partner in the areas of change management, multi-tiered systems of support, and English language learners. And these are all the districts that I work in across the state. I'm a former elementary teacher, elementary principal, district administrator, and an OSPI statewide administrator in all my past lives. Simply stated, here are our main buckets. School climate refers to the quality and character of school life. It's based on patterns of students, parents, and school personnel's experiences of school life. And it reflects the norms that we agree on as a group, and the goals that we set, and that includes student goals, the values that are reflected by the operations of the schools and the interpersonal relationships, and of course, the teaching, the learning practices, and the organizational structures. Thank you for talking about the grant, Joanna. It's really interesting that many of our grant recipients are rural districts. And here's some of the challenges and possible solutions. I'll let you look this over, folks, while I talk a little bit about the positive for having rural school districts receiving these grants is that we're talking about stakeholders. And in our larger, more urban districts, we have a bigger access to our community stakeholders. And in rural districts, we tend to not have that access. And so getting more people involved is in the multi-tiered systems of support. Having that stakeholder voice is really critical. So especially in narrowing the achievement gap. So wanted to bring those factors out as the advantages for having rural school districts. Whenever we talk about building school climate, we need to start with the why. And the why in the center of the why is real about what the school believes. Above and beyond the mission statement, it's the collective values that schools and the people in schools really believe and define who they are and what they stand for. Beliefs form actions and which yield results, and common belief systems create the potential for collective efficacy, where everyone in the boat is rowing in the same direction. And that's really the key in the research by Hattie et al. Jenny Donahue talks about collective efficacy in a way where we are all rowing in the same direction, or everybody can understand the value of believing the same thing. And that creates a connectedness factor. And that's a difference between what I think is a school climate measurement and a connectedness measurement, in a way that our staff, our students, and our parents show that they have relationships with the school, and hopefully those relationships will be positive. So many school connectedness factors are embedded in school climate measurements, and we'll get over the different types here in a second. And then number 4 is that creating these systems so the systems run smoothly, so that the importance of creating positive relationships within the school is systematized and articulated from the bottom up and the top down. And then finally, envisioning positive outcomes where every adult understands the value of student voice in students being able to articulate their positive futures. And so I want to bring the hopeful, happy school zone ahead, where student voice is so important. As we talk about our sources of data, we have many school climate surveys that are created in larger districts by themselves. We have the great folks down there, as I mentioned before, the Healthy Youth Survey. We've used in the school improvement portion of OSPI CEE perception surveys. There's also the Oregon LEAD tool, California's CORE tool. We also have the Panorama tool that's being used widely across our state too. Also connectedness tools across the United States, the International Gallup Student Poll on hope and well-being factors, and those are in programmatic climate surveys. They focus on outcomes and results, or when staff plan with the end in mind, and they plan with the end of mind with the understanding that they're going to believe on their experiences, and they're going to believe that all kids can succeed, and all means all. So the action plans that bring about a school system involves the who, and the what, and the when, and articulates out a timeline and getting that work started. And please, again, don't forget the student voice as the evidence of the learning, and student goal setting is really key. So I thought I'd bring a student voice here. This is from one of the schools in Clover Park School District a few years ago, one of the schools that formerly was struggling and then became a school for many years. I'll let you look over this because I thought it was pretty cute as far as an elementary example, especially being able to throw a pie when they grow up. But understanding the future and having adults being able to bring the future out with students is a great way to get above and beyond those factors that students, especially with adverse childhood experiences or adverse community environments, cannot get past when they're living stressful days. Having those adults articulate the future and helping them frame and understand what the future looks like is a really big step in creating positive school environments. And so the big ideas here that I'm setting forth for you is changing those mindsets, because in the past, some of the ideas that we used to use in understanding what school climate has been doesn't work anymore. Really, the work on growth mindset and now the work coming out of Harvard on improvement mindset is really key to understanding that we as educators are all in this improvement business. And then moving ahead as collectively as a staff or as a district to create the fidelity of implementation is the other critical idea. Everybody, again, with collective efficacy needs to row in the same direction. And then, of course, making instruction explicit, and that explicit also means that student voice is included. I can't emphasize that enough. And so when we do that, we move and beyond, above and beyond, to my favorite friend here, Albert Einstein, talking about the inner genius, being able to solve significant problems today with the thinking that we have currently and the technology, and especially the understanding of how students learn and the science that comes behind that. It's about time to make these great changes and improve cultures in schools. Again, I talked about the collective efficacy piece. As research is resounding, it's a key organizational variable in facilitating student achievement. Collective efficacy matters. And this is the research here cited down below that you can cite later on. But really, the research is showing in mathematics and reading general improvement, almost up to 10% in school improvement in math and reading achievement, just by everybody believing the same thing on a staff. Everybody understanding not only the value of creating those important, caring, and sustainable relationships, but being able to measure those relationships. And we have ways to measure those relationships now that we didn't in the past when we were doing this in the past. So, and this research, again, is backed up by Hattie and his colleagues too, our collective efficacy. My time is almost up, so I want to talk about some of the components that are basic in multi-tiered systems of support, whether your staff or your district is using PBIS. The least effective ways in getting students' attention in a way that inspires them is through punishment and exclusion. And we all know this now, and the legislature has passed some laws now, so we understand that we as educators, as caring adults, need to be about inclusive practices by being proactive with our school-wide management systems, by direct teaching of pro-social skills in meaningful environments, and having interventions that are based on behavior and about the environment that students are learning in, and the inclusive practices in a way that we can bring students back into the fold to understand that they're valued by the caring adult. Other programs also talk about having students articulate their goals one-on-one, helping students, as I said before, envision their positive outcomes, and tracking data on deficits and strengths. This says it all, basically, and this is why we've gone statewide with multi-tiered systems of support. The academic on the RTI and the non-academic, whether it be PBIS or some other form. If we are committed to educating all students, then logically, we are obligated to provide multi-tiered systems of support to meet everybody's needs. These are examples of climate practices. The big one here I want to point off to the right is the high rates of positive and informative feedback, 4-to-1, in the ratio of 4-to-1, and differentiated instruction so we meet the needs. Really, we want to talk about everything that we can to front load our practices in Tier 1 instruction, either academic supports or non-academic supports, in a way that students always have access to that Tier 1 direct instruction. These are examples, and this is a heavy slide, so you may want to go back to it later. This comes directly out of ESSA, and why school climate needs to be one of your indicators. And I can't emphasize the middle column enough, especially when you get a program into place, is to make sure you progress monitor, plan and do, and study, and then adjust in the actions that you do in moving forward. And that's the basis of our multi-tiered system of support. So again, to summarize what I've said, what advice I would give to schools is start with common agreements. The non-negotiables should be good for everybody or universal, meaning that we should all believe that all kids can succeed without exception, because all means all, and that we are in the people improvement business. And then the how part, we have teams, either leadership teams or behavior support teams, that inform the whole staff so that we're not getting large discussions that take for hours into the weeds. And then once we vote, we are on board and we're all rowing in the same direction. And then we use our data to inform our decisions, and we take a systems approach to defining that data. And that helps us create our positive cultures. And Val's going to get into it as a practitioner a lot more. I'm going to leave you with this recipe for the future from another elementary student. It's up to the adults again to help students envision what their hopes and dreams will look like. And Allie here truly typifies what it means to make thinking explicit. We're coming to the point now where we have a polling section, so I'm going to stop my sharing and hand it over to back to you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Paul. We did get our polling feature fixed, so if you want to answer the poll, that would be great. Okay, now we're going to turn it over to Val.
All right, hello.
Hi,
I'm
Val.
Val Jones. I am the principal of Gates High School in Franklin Pierce School District, which is a small district of about 8,000 students in Pierce County, also known as Parkland, Washington. We are a small school that serves 10th through 12th graders that are referred from our comprehensive high schools. And we're very diverse. We have about 29% Hispanic, 34% white. 8.5% of our students are Black, 9% are Islander, and 17% are 2 or more races. And 100% of our students qualify for free breakfast and free lunch. What I'm going to reinforce is pretty much everything that Paul talked about, and we didn't really even gather on this at all. What I want to share with you right now, our current beliefs, and this is part of our collective efficacy, is as a school, we believe that our culture is what we allow. So if things are going sideways, we're allowing that. And I personally believe, and as do all of our teachers as leaders of learning, that if a system fails, it's a direct correlation of the leadership that we're providing. And then finally, that maladaptive behavior serves a purpose. And oftentimes you will find maladaptive behavior in unhealthy learning environments. So my personal background was at the district office for several years. I served the schools, I did the very first, in 1998, the first Healthy Youth Survey. I was in charge of all the mental health services. I was the director of guidance and counseling. And an opening came up at our alternative high school, and I jumped at the opportunity and have not left since. So I've been in education for 29 years, and here at Gates, this is my 11th year. So the data I'm going to share is from before I started and where we are now. And the reason I share that data is just to prove, I believe, that when you put this theory into action, it really does work. So many changes had to take place. We were a very low performing school. We had a shift in leadership, and that required a shift in adult attitudes. We had to really honestly look at our system. We were a system of survival. We didn't have any response mechanisms in place. There was no tier 1, tier 2, but we were definitely a tier 3. And kids were falling through the gaps. We had a very high dropout rate. My dropout list was 2 and 3 pages, and it was very overwhelming. Teachers were burnt out, and teachers were scared. Just to give you a little bit an idea of where I'm heading with my information, so you can see the information I provide as credible. In 2010, you can see our on-time graduation rate was 27%. And this year we clocked in at 78.7%. And this is with our highest risk population in our school district. All of these students, I believe, would most likely drop out if we didn't have these systems in place. This was our suspension trend data the year I started in 09-10, as I shared, when things were not so good. The first year we implemented a systemic response and improved our tier 1. We dropped from 154 to 32 suspensions. And we had a little bit of a peak there in 13, 14. But as you can see, pretty consistently from where it was, we've been able to maintain a very low suspension rate. And part of that is because we have an all-in attitude in terms of how we go about providing students a safe learning environment. This is pretty redundant, but our first year when we made all of the changes, it required a lot of trust building. It had to start with the adults. And the first question everybody had to ask themselves was, were they willing to work hard enough for this change so that we could have the biggest impact on our students and be a student-centered organization? So we shifted from a culture of complaint. Those kids was a word I heard a lot. Those kids don't come to school. Those parents don't care. And then we had to see it more of a culture of trust, where we understood that those kids were our kids and were a direct reflection of what we were giving them and putting into them. So as a result, the first thing we did, we built principles that guide our culture, which I'm going to share with that in a minute. We went from that culture of complaint to a culture of trust and hold each other accountable for that. We agreed to community agreements that if one teacher does it, they all do it. We had a growth mindset, and we decided that we were a trauma-invested school. Most of our kids were tier 3 kids at their schools before they came to us. So we have to reshift our thinking around how we approached educating these students. And I kind of want to add in here, we had a lot of support from our district, and the superintendent who hired me at the time had this belief system that the alternative high school was our research and development school. So I was given a lot of freedom to try a lot of new things, and then the things that we tried when they worked, and most of them did, we were invited to then share those with the rest of the school district. So there was a huge social justice mindset from the very beginning. So once we, going back to that action research that Paul was talking about, we would try new things, we would see what worked, we would follow the data, and if the data said it wasn't working, we would shift on the fly. We didn't wait till a new quarter, we didn't wait till a new school year. We were constantly shifting and changing things as it met the needs of our students. These are the principles that guide our culture that I shared with you. You can take a look at those. First thing we did in that year that we started to see a lot of success is we met as a team, and a team means everybody was there. And we looked at what we want to be the guiding principles for everything we do every day. And this is what our staff came up with. We print this and we all sign it like a Declaration of Independence every single year. And we also review this at every team meeting weekly. And we talk every day for 5 minutes. We meet as a team and talk about how we're seeing these actively alive in our school culture. I just wanted to share a little bit about some of the data that we've seen coming out of the changes as well. So what we were was a school of very low expectations, and we had high suspension and high dropout and a low graduation rate. And when we raised our expectations with support as a collective staff, our data shows that we have the highest graduation rate in history for 7 years. Our students are not only graduating, but they're graduating enrolled or employed or enlisted. We're seeing students come back with 4-year college degrees, and when I first got here, I had hoped they would just do running start. They've exceeded the goals that we set for ourselves. We don't do punishment in our school anymore. We have a process where students can self-regulate by either taking a pause, and when they take a pause, they can go to our, called the R&R room, regulate and restore. It's a space where they can go practice breathing, mindfulness. They can talk to someone if they need to. They can use kinetic sand. They can sit in a rocking chair. They can do whatever they need to do to get themselves back to being learning ready, and that's something they get to choose to do. The other thing that we have lots of other systems in place like Safe and Civil Schools, and we have a Success Academy and some other things that I'll talk about. But the outcome of a lot of these changes have been, for instance, that students enjoying school. At an alternative high school, we're pretty proud to say that 84% of our students enjoy being in school, and that 100% of our students say that they've been taught the rules and expectations, which is pretty critical to have a successful school. And 98% of them are actually proud to be attending the alternative high school, which once had that history of being the school where the bad kids went. So looking at our suspension trend data again and some of the interventions that we put into place, the first year we did a reset and pause protocol, which I shared was our behavior protocol. Teachers do not enter office discipline reports. If there's an issue, then administration is called, or the students reset, or they take a pause. We use sheltered instruction operation protocol, which is an ELL best practice, and we feel that if it's an ELL best practice, it's probably good for all students. And our PBIS supports. We also brought in Safe and Civil Schools and did some work with Randy Sprick specifically, and then really fully implemented restorative practices, including community building circles, which you'll see happening daily on our campus. What's not in here is we also last year piloted and adopted a social emotional learning curriculum, and all of our students are provided the opportunity to take a 2-term class in social emotional. Actually, they're not invited to, they're expected to. And then some of our behavior supports, just sharing what our universal looks like. We have a Success Academy. Any student who goes to school here is required to attend a 3-day training, so everybody gets all the same information. I already shared some of the other things that are on there. We have a check and connect protocol. We have Project Pass. Today's Project Pass, the last hour of the day, students can self-select where they're going to go to get caught up in their classes or their credits. We also have a full day that we do that, the very last day of term. And then we just implemented those personal pathways with the 3 E's. I wish I could give credit to who I borrowed that from, but I think I borrowed it from someone in a different state. Our targeted approach is we have a graduation center on Mondays, and we have a partnership with the YMCA, although we don't have a YMCA in our community. In fact, we don't have much in our community. We once had a skating rink, but they tore that down and put in a store. So although we do have a lot of dispensaries in our communities, anything we can provide here on our campus, such as mental health services, which is more of our personalized level, or tier 3. We have drug and alcohol counselors on site. Our district recently entered into a contract, so you don't just have to be Medicaid eligible in order to participate in mental health. We have a contract where the district will also pay for mental health services for our students. And we recently brought in a family engagement coordinator to really try and connect with those parents. From an attendance perspective, we have a lot of our kids have a lot of attendance issues. That's part of how they gotten behind in school. And so we have a home visiting protocol. So I think last year we made at least 80 home visits to help those students get to school, and it works. So the process for building our system and how it's spread in our district, as I shared, we're the research and development school per my leadership. And so now it's but district-wide restorative practices have been put in place. Every administrator has been trained, and most of our staff have been trained. We've also done some training around being trauma invested, and a lot of that is around the Dr. Bruce Perry work, and a lot of the work that's being done with brain science and regulation, and the impact of not only early childhood trauma, but ongoing trauma that our students have, and how that impacts their learning and their ability to be successful in school. They don't always show up with, 4 on the floor and just ready to listen to everything the teacher has to say, which is why our pause protocol works so well. Once we train all of our administrators at the highest level, we have 100% buy-in all the way to our school board, which I feel very, very fortunate for that to be the case for us. Giving advice to people, I would say everything that Paul said. I agree with that 100%. First one is to have a shared mission and a shared vision. Make sure that everybody is on the same page. If they're not on the same page, there are ways, without terminating someone, there are ways to just let people know that this is the direction we're going. If it's not a comfortable fit for you, that's okay. But this is the direction we're going, and we're going to stick with that and go back to that quote about if a system fails, it's a direct result of the leadership. Adhering to the community agreements and being willing to call foul when those aren't being fulfilled. And then we live our guiding principles as a team. We do a 5-to-1 positive to corrective ratio, and when we do our administrative walkthroughs, we always do a 5-minute timed to make sure that's happening and leave feedback for our teachers. We're very focused on equity, a little less on equality. Our students understand that we're going to treat each one of them as an individual because they all come from a different place, and we're very student-centered. Keeping it green just means that culture of trust. And the very first principle that guides our culture is we value every day as a new day. And that's very important for a student who has a bad day yesterday. They need to know they need to come back and that today's a new day. And then finally, we believe that the fundamental purpose of teaching is to change the brain. And so when we stay focused on that, we're able to live out our motto this year. Every year we have a motto, and this year our motto is to assume awesomeness. And I can honestly say that coming to work in an environment where these things are being practiced, and to be educated in an environment like this, like family, than anything else. So that is all of my information. I do believe.
Thanks, Val. That's awesome. We have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions for you. And while we're answering some of those questions, Joanna's going to ask them. I'm going to launch the original poll, the one that I couldn't get going in the beginning. It's who's here. If you'll answer those questions while Joanna reads some of your questions.
Val, we have a question from Kate. What is the name of the social emotional learning curriculum you are currently using?
Sure, I just typed that in there. It's called School Connect, and Keith Matheny came and trained our whole staff in that, and I would recommend that. He's an amazing trainer and really helps get buy-in.
Okay, thank you. Val, Kendra asks, how do you staff your R&R room? How do you ensure it does not become a place for students to gather and socialize, escape classroom?
Yes, perfect. It's timed. We have new discipline laws, so it's timed. And also it's staffed by a paraprofessional who's been trained in everything that we've just discussed. And she has been trained in having strong boundaries and appropriateness, and our teachers know that unless a student is really dysregulated, then they would let someone know if they went there. So it doesn't become a hangout space. It really becomes a space that they can relax and regulate.
Great. I'm going to launch one more poll. It's our evaluation. If you'll take just a minute to complete that, we would appreciate that. We have some resources for you. Our Ronnie Larson has been typing them into the chat for you. Of course, these are hyperlinked. If you go to our website, you'll be able to download the presentation and just use the hyperlink. Another resource we've developed is our technical assistance button. We want you to be able to contact a real live person to help answer any questions. If you want to learn more, connect to a program, or get some fresh ideas, we're here for you. Just click on the button and an Aussie staffer will get you whatever you need. Again, I'm Bonnie Zimmerman. I'm sitting in for Kepi Anderson, who couldn't be here today. Joanna Brown, our school climate program supervisor. Paul Wieneke, continuous improvement partner. And Valinda Jones, principal at Gates High School at the Franklin Pierce School District. There's our contact information. We always like to give credit where credit is due. If you liked an image from the Gate Equity webinar, we use images that are from the schools we're featuring or are from the Noun Project. As we wrap up today, we want to encourage you to take a minute to reflect on the webinar and discuss these questions. You can use the chat, the people around you, or just jot down some thoughts on a sticky note. What are the big ideas for you? What are your next leadership moves? What do you value? What questions are you still wondering about?
We just had a question from the audience. Does anyone have guidance documents on manifestation determination? We will be putting the contact person from OSPI, Lee Collier, would have information about that, and his email address will be in the chat in just a moment. We have a question from the audience. Sonia asks, how can a school get further training if not part of the school climate transformation grant? For example, we brought in a person from RTI International at the beginning of the year for a one-day training, but much more guidance will be needed, particularly regarding progress monitoring. I am thinking more on the academic side of strengthening Tier 1 and doing Tier 2 with fidelity. To answer that question, we have, beyond the program supports that we currently have available, an MTSS Fest, which is in May this year, May 4th and 5th. We also have a new director here at OSPI, director of MTSS, and we are working on a continuum of support, particularly working with ESDs to build more support and that will be available through the 9 ESDs. However, if you would like to reach out and get more specific ways to support the needs of your district within MTSS, I will put my email address, and you are more than welcome to reach out to me, and I can connect you to more resources.
Thanks, Joanna.
Can we communicate the dates of MTSS to others? The dates are currently listed on the OSPI MTSS website. The dates of OSPI MTSS Fest are set. They will be May 4th and 5th. However, registration will not be available until January. MTSS Fest this year will be in SeaTac.